And welcome to the Valley Sports Telegram bracket breakdown for the LA City Section Football Championships. Kenny Hodges and I are going to go through the bracket. We'll do round one kind of matchup by matchup. And after we give our confidence meter, we will give our bracket projections where we've already filled out our bracket and we're just going to read it off. If you want to know more about what we feel, comment and we'll be around and we'll let you know. So Kenny, welcome again, and we'll get rolling. Okay. So in the open division, San Pedro's the number 1 seed. They've got Eagle Rock, who's the 8. Franklin is the 5 seed. They'll be visiting Garfield, who's the 4. Banning is the 3 seed, and they'll be hosting Roosevelt. Venice is the 2 seed, and they'll be hosting the defending city champion, Birmingham Patriots. I'm going to Division 1. Granada Hills is the 1 seed hosting 16 Canoga Park. The 8 seed Dorsey, 8 seed Southgate is hosting 9 seed Dorsey. Cleveland is the 5 seed hosting Lincoln, who's 12. El Camino is the 4 seed with the 13th Fairfax coming in. Palisades is the 3 seed hosting Huntington Park at 14. Number 6 Dimely is hosting number 11 Gardena. Westchester will be hosting Narbonne as the 7 versus 10. And number 2 Carson will be hosting 15 Hamilton. And then moving into D2, number 1 Monroe will be hosting 16 Taft. Kennedy gets a home game as number 8 hosting Jefferson, who's 9. North Hollywood checks in at number 5, and they'll have Legacy come in and pay them a visit. Number 4 Marquez will see Grant come in, and Grant at 13. We have another Valley matchup where number 3 Panorama is going to host number 4 Pauley. Number 6 King Drew is going to be hosting 11 Sylmar. George Washington Prep checks in at number 7, and they'll host 10 Santee. And then at the bottom of the bracket, we have Bell at number 2, hosting Arleta, who's at number 15. And moving into the Division 3 bracket, Chatsworth checks in at number 1. They'll be hosting Diego Rivera, who's 16. Maywood at number 9 is going to visit Fremont, who's number 8. Number 5 Wilson is going to host 12 San Fernando. Number 4 Jordan is going to host 13 Dr. Maya Angelou Community Charter. Number 3 Manual Arts will host 14 Locke. Number 6 Bernstein has number 11 Chavez. Number 7 Southeast will host number 10 Verdugo Hills. And wrapping up, we have number 2 Crenshaw hosting number 15 Los Angeles. So Kenny, in that first round, we have some choice matchups. Do want to hear your thoughts just kind of in general before we jump into our confidence meter. I'm excited about some of them. There's some potential upsets that stand out to me. What do you feel?
Yeah, there are definitely some intriguing matchups to get right out of the gate. And there are some potential matchups by the time we hit the quarterfinals or the semis in each of these divisions that could be some really interesting rematches of some regular season games that were hotly contested. There could be some real familiarity between some of our Valley teams if they were to survive and advance the first couple of rounds. where they would directly go against some competitors they know very, very well in order to take home a city championship. So yeah, and like I said, there are one or two matchups right away in round one that you look at and you say, I don't know if the higher seed got the better of the draw in these matchups, and we'll kind of go through that when we kind of break down our confidence in each of these teams going forward.
So jumping into the open division bracket, we have one team from the Valley who is representing. They are the two-time defending city champion Birmingham Patriots. Confidence level for me on a 1 to 10 is about an 8. I don't think they're gonna make it all the way, but I am confident enough they'll probably be making the championship game.
Yeah, I'm just about there with you. I think I put my confidence with them this year at about a 7. And the only reason why I went 7 is because they're going to be asking a sophomore quarterback to kind of keep a run going when there are a few teams, one in particular in San Pedro, who are they're gunning to take them down because they've been the team standing in their way from a city championship now for a couple of seasons. So I don't know if their quarterback is ready for that spot yet when he's going to run into a couple of tough teams, but until someone knocks them off, it's going to be hard for me to not place them at least in that championship game. They've got a tough draw coming out of the gate with Venice, no doubt. That Venice team is legit, but I think they can. I think they are equipped with the pieces they have with that have championship medal still in place that they can get them. So I have the confidence in them in about a 7 to at least get back to a championship game in the open division.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can see them getting that far. And going into Division 1, we have Valley representatives in the top half of the bracket, including a head-to-head where you have Granada Hills and Canoga Park. My confidence meter for Granada Hills is, I'd say it's about a 7. I can see them making a lot of noise going through. Might be running into issues, semifinals and on. For Canoga, they got a really tough draw. I can't say too much, so they could upset Granada. They want to be out of the realm of possibility, but my confidence in them is about 4 in doing that. If they do pull the upset, I can see them going on a nice little run, semis or to the championship, but currently they sit at a 4. Next, we've got the 5 seed in Cleveland. It's about the same. I give that a 5 just for the first round. Beyond that, I don't see it. I'm about 50-50 on them getting out of the first round. Just the way that they've had some issues in the last few weeks. I don't really know if Lincoln is going to be a big challenge, but I'm not too sure where Cleveland is coming from in that I can see them get past, but not much after that. El Camino's the number 4, and for me, I like the mix they're bringing. I like the fact that they can run, they can pass. Their quarterback is unflappable, and they've got a lot of skill at the running back position and some power. And the way they've kind of played recently, the Granada Hills game notwithstanding, I would put them at, I probably rank them about a 7 or an 8. I'm waffling there, but they're probably about a 7.5. I could see them get to the championship game. I could see them getting knocked out in the semis, but I think they're going to have a good run.
Yeah. For me, that Granada Canoga matchup is really tricky because I think Canoga got a tough draw here, and it's made especially tough because had these two teams been opposite ends of the bracket, I would have almost been inclined to say that this is my D1 championship, just based on what I had seen from both teams in the second half of the season when they kind of really settled into their identities and who they were. But unfortunately, they are meeting in round one, which feels like this could be a launching point for either one of these teams to make a real run to the D1 championship. So for me, I gotta say the confidence meter for like Granada Hills is probably sitting at probably about a 7, just because if they were playing anyone else, I'd be like, oh, this might be my 9 or 10 confidence that they're going to go to the D1 championship, because this team was very close, very, very close to being an open participant. But this is a tough game that they got to get through in the first round, and if they get through it, they might be able to make a run. On the other hand, I'm kind of with you there with Canoga. It's hard to say as much as I want to that I have a 10 level confidence in a team that has drawn the number 1 seed in the D1 in their first matchup. But I'll go at about a 5 or 6 with them because I know they're going to play this game tough. I don't know if I necessarily think they're going to be able to withstand the firepower from Granada Hills to push through, but if they were, there'd be no stopping them beyond that. Cleveland, I think I'm at about a 7 or an 8 with them in terms of their potential in this bracket. We know what they have in Corey Hall. We know what they have in Nano Lopez at quarterback. They've been a little bit inconsistent down the stretch, but this is one of those teams, if they get hot and you've got if the Stanleys are the best players in the bracket, then Corey Hall is right on that one line with them. If this was hockey and I was building a top line of guys and impact players in this bracket, I'm going to Stanley's and I'm putting Corey Hall right there with him on the outside. And I think that's going to be good enough for them to make a little bit of a run. We'll get into our brackets a little later beyond it. The same thing with El Camino. El Camino, I'm at about a 6. I am a believer in this team, but I think they're a year away from being in a position where we would look at them and say they're just going to breeze through D1 and get to a championship. I think they're a little young and they play a little young at times, but they've got all the talent, so there wouldn't be no shock if they got further.
Yeah. Either way, that is going to be an exciting top half of the bracket for us to monitor. Mm-hmm. And moving into Division 2, we've got another All-Valley, or 2 All-Valley first-round matchups. Kicking it off at the top, Monroe and Taft. And with what Monroe's done this season, these seniors just being angry and taking it out on the field, not anywhere else. They channel that anger and they take it out on the opponent on the other side. Mm-hmm. And so my confidence in them is a solid 8. This is a team that's gonna show up week in and week out. They're gonna get angry and they're gonna make something happen. Now, I'm almost talking myself into a lower confidence rating just because they got their league title. Do they say they're happy with the league title and just kind of soften up? I don't think so. I'm right there, but I don't think so. I think they keep it going and they make a big run. With Taft, this draw for them being a West Valley team, being a team that fights against that kind of talent in their league. We saw what they did last year. They went over in league. They got a D3 seeding and went to the final until they were pushed pretty hard in the final by a very game Panorama team. But that being said, I would have to say my confidence in them sits at about a 4, just like previous, because I don't know if they're going to go and do much. I don't see them beating Monroe. The next one is we have Kennedy, who's who slots in at the 8 seed. I've got a little more confidence in them, not too much. They check in about a 5 or a 6 for me, throwing about a 5.5. This is a team that has a lot of talent, and they've feasted on lower end teams, but they've struggled against better talent. So basically puts them in coin flip territory right there with a 5.5. The number 5, North Hollywood, they're young in some key places. If they can stay disciplined, they can make a run. And that puts them in at about a 6.5 for me. Only because there's a big if they can stay disciplined. They haven't really shown it against some of the top talent. They had a really good season, but when push came to shove, that immaturity kind of crept in. So they're there at a 6.5. Grant is the number 13 seed. They're also a 6.5 for me because they've been Jekyll and Hyde all year. They seem to have put it together, winning their last 3 games. Verdugo Hills, Arleta, and Pauly to finish the season. But again, against some of the better teams, you don't really know what they're going to bring. They'll give you a good half of football, and then you're scratching your head for the second half. So they're sitting there 6.5. The next one, we have another All Valley matchup. Panorama is the 3rd seed with Pauly at 14. Panorama for me gets a 9. Like, this defense is just legit. They take away everything you want to do, and good luck. And then the offense feeds off of the energy of the defense. The defense gets multiple stops, and the offense goes, okay, all we need to do is move the ball. Because if we don't score on this drive and move the ball, our defense is going to hold, and now we got better field position. I dare you to play the field position game against us. We're going to come out on top. We saw what happened with Kennedy. So that's a 9. And Pauly, the 14 seed, it really hurts that they get fed to a team like Panorama. My confidence in them is a 2. Even if they get past Panorama, I don't know if they get out of the next round, but I don't see them getting past Panorama. Next one we have is Sylmar and King Drew. Sylmar's very young. They've had an up and down season. They're about a 4 for me, or 3.5 actually, because you don't know if the youth is going to creep up or what it's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the last team at the bottom of the bracket is Arleta, who's the 15 seed. Sorry, Don Scott, your defense is great, but that's a 1. I mean, I don't know if you get by Bell, and I don't see it this year. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of things coming. Your defense is great, but yeah, you're sitting at a 1 for me.
Yeah, the top portion of this bracket for me is tricky in terms of my confidence because there are just so many variables and so many ways these things can break in terms of what matchups might be created down the line for a team that might get through the first or the second round. So, but I'll start with Monroe. I've been on Monroe all year, and my confidence in them I would put at about a 7. They have some offensive limitation, but this senior led group they are so sturdy is a great term to use for them. They're even when they go up against better offenses, it's bend but don't break. They keep themselves in games. They don't beat themselves. They're disciplined. They're strong. They're structured, and they are they deserve to be the 1 seed in this bracket. There's some landmine of game. There's some landmine type games as they would advance. But I put my confidence in them at about a 7. Maybe I'm talking myself into an 8 just because I wouldn't be shocked at all to see them in a championship game. If I had to bet money on it, if you told me I had, pick a team, they'd be right there at the top of the list of all our Valley reps and the teams that are in this bracket, because this bracket really is the Valley bracket in terms of how many teams we have here. So there's going to be a lot of familiarity with these programs as we sort of progress, assuming a lot of these teams advance. So I'll put them about an 8. Taft, I'm right there with Taft is at about a 2 for me, just because this has been a grueling season for them. It's been a long season, every game on the road. It's hard to tell what they've got left in the tank, and then having to throw Monroe at them in the first round, that's a real tough draw. And even if somehow they scratched and clawed and found a way to get past that, I don't see this team being able to do this postseason like they did last season, where they were in Division III and those matchups sort of favored them going that way. I don't think the draw is favorable for them this time around, even if they were to get out of the first round. So I'll put them at a 2. Kennedy, there's something about this team for me that I want to put my confidence in them at about an 8, because of the fact that when you look at the teams in this draw, if they were going up against some of those D1 teams that I think are going to just out physical them, I think my confidence would be a little lower. I just think that this team has they have the talent and the scheme to kind of figure out what any of these teams on this side of the bracket would throw at them until they got to the championship. So I'm going to put my confidence in them at an 8. North Hollywood, my confidence in them is at about a 6, but it's because of their youth. They've got the talent. Burton Gibson have been great all year, but their youth tends to show up at times when their youth and the mistakes that come with youth show up at times that you don't want them. They can get a little bit undisciplined. Same thing with Grant. Grant, my confidence in them is probably at about a 3, just because I know they've got the talent, but the inconsistency for that team makes you feel like it's not quite there yet. Maybe next year when that quarterback is a little bit more experienced and they kind of work through some issues and they find a little bit more consistency, maybe they'll be in a better spot. But right now, I don't have a ton of confidence in them. I'm confident they can pull the upset in the first round. I don't know if I see them getting beyond that. Panorama, I'm putting them at a 10. I just think this is as complete an identity of a team as you will find that you would want to take into the playoffs. Sound in all phases. They don't make mistakes and beat themselves. They're physical. They limit the things that you want to do. They force you to play their style of game. The way that they play just bodes well for a playoff run. Just like it did for them last year when they almost pulled out the D3 championship, and they weren't nearly as good last year as they are now. Silmar, same thing. Confidence at about a 3. Just the youth and exuberance also leads to a lot of youthful mistakes and undisciplined play at times. I just don't know if this is the year that it works out for them for a playoff run. And here's where we differ the most so far. I have my confidence in our leader just because of this side of the bracket, how it sets up in the first couple of rounds. That is a tough ask to go on the road to Bell, but there's just something about that pedigree from last year. I think there's enough left over from last year that they can piece together an upset. And then you look at what they might see in the second round. I could see them finding their way to a semifinal against a tough Panorama team or something like that. So I'm going to put my confidence. Please don't make me look foolish, our leader here. I'm going to put my confidence at a 7 that they're going to pull this upset and win a couple of games. I think they figured out a couple of things at the end of the season. I think they figured out enough to where, okay, if we can just kind of piece some things together on offense, we know we can be a bully on defense, and that might carry them for a few rounds in this bracket. So I'm going to go at about a 7. I think they got big, which I guess I'm showing my hand here of what I think they're going to do when we kind of go through the bracket. But I still believe that enough of that championship pedigree is there from last year, with that team that took their league and made a little noise and last year. I think they still got enough there that will bolster them for a couple of rounds in the playoffs.
And we both kind of said it. D2 seems to be the Valley bracket. It has the most representation from the Valley for us, and there's a lot of exciting potential. D3 has potential, and that's kind of been the staple of D3. It's teams that haven't lived up to their potential, teams that could be good, teams that you scratch your head at. I don't know how you keep falling over your own front feet. Just move forward. But it's there. And I'll just jump right in. Chatsworth is the number 1 seed. My confidence level on them is a 9. I don't know. I just talked myself out of it. It's 8.5. And the reason it's an 8.5, and I'm gonna be just straightforward here, is this team is, from the admission of Coach Street, this team is light on position coaching. Not coaching, but position coaching. And when you don't have a line coach, or your line coach is gone, you're going to have a lot of holding penalties. You're going to have false starts. You're going to have offsides. You're going to have all kinds of little mental mistakes that come without having a coach who's drilling it into you. And for that reason only, these youthful errors that have plagued Chatsworth all season keeps me from keeping them at a 9, even a 10. They're a really good team. I can see them making a run all the way through, but they get into a game against a team in the semifinals, and now they got a couple holding penalties that bring back these Isaiah Ramo touchdowns. And what's going to happen, right? So yeah, they're about an 8.5 for me right now.
Yeah.
A little bit.
No, go ahead.
Okay. A little bit down the bracket with San Fernando. I saw them get bullied, and I'm trying to avoid recency bias in my head because I know what this team can do. But in the back of my brain, it's just like, you know what you saw 2 weeks ago. So I can't shake it. They sit at a 5 for me. And then going down to the bottom half of the bracket, we got 2 teams. Chavez, for me, this is a 7.5. I would like it to be higher, but their offense is always going to be their question mark. Is how are they going to score? They're going to beat you up on the defensive side of the ball. You might score against them, but you're going to have to earn it. You're going to be black and blue. Offensive side of the ball, I'm not so sure. They're 7.5. If they can figure out a way to score 2 or 3 times a game, they could go on a big run. And then Verdugo Hills, I'm going to plug that in as about a 6. This is a team that didn't seem to want to get physical early in the season, that started to kind of figure it out as the season went on. They beat a tough Chavez team. And so it's about carrying that momentum now into the playoffs. Yeah, they lost to North Hollywood last week, but they're starting to rediscover their identity. But yeah, they're about a 6 for me.
Yeah, so not much to add in terms of Chatsworth, because I'm right there with you. The difference to me with Chatsworth being where they are here in D3 and not being a team that's sitting more in a comfortable position in D2 is because when we saw them go up against some of those teams in D2, they beat themselves quite a bit. they had the talent to play and be in those games, like the season opener against the number 1 seed in D2, Monroe. They ended up they played Monroe toe to toe, but when it came down to brass tacks, they could not make the mistakes that ended up costing them that game. But conversely, they're the 1 seed here in this bracket because when they played Verdugo and they didn't make a ton of mistakes, they ran Verdugo out of the building. So we know that this team is loaded with talent in a myriad of places, especially along their line. But their line also can play undisciplined. They can get a lot of penalties. They can beat themselves. They put themselves behind the chains. So the question for them in D3 are they going to be that team that constantly plays behind the chains? Or are they going to play discipline and run through these teams that talent-wise they should be better than? I'm going to put the confidence for me right there with you at about an 8, 8.5, because they probably should waltz to the championship just based on when you look at some of the teams that will potentially line up. But the one caveat you have is, are they going to beat themselves? They are the only thing that can stop themselves from taking the Division III championship. So I'll put them at an 8. San Fernando, I'm right there with you as well. I'm at about a 4 with them. We know they can play with a lot of teams, but we've seen them in the team games that they've lost. We've seen them fade. And when it came down to kind of, are you going to be able to continue to make the plays and kind of hang in these games against teams that might be on par or better than you talent-wise? And I don't know if they're there. So I'll put them at about a 4. Chavez, I want to go 15 on the confidence meter with this team. I really do, because that I believe in what Rodrigo Nunez is building with this team. And I'm going on record right now as enjoy seeing them here in Division III because they won't be here next year. I really believe that. I think they will not be in D3 next year. I think they will be entrenched in D2 by next season, because I think he's, between the fact that he's playing a lot of young guys now who are going to be better next year, and then they've got some guys in JV that are going to move up and help them next year. I think that they are setting. I think that this is going to be the run that bolsters them in the way that what we saw Panorama do last year has set them up for this year. So I'm going to go at about a 7, because I think that their side of the bracket kind of sets up well for them if they can kind of get through this first, if they can pull the first upset. And if they beat Bernstein, I think sky could be the limit for them. So I'm going to go at about a 7 for them. Verdugo Hills, I'm struggling because I believe in the coach. I believe in the staff, and I want to believe that they have what it takes to make a deep run. But they've been so consistently inconsistent this year in terms of what you're going to get from players that you need to make an impact, that it's hard for me to believe that they're going to be able to go on a run here. I think they can win a game or two, but I don't know how much further beyond that I would put my confidence in them. So I'm going to settle at about a 4 for Verdugo.
Yeah, and I mean, agree or disagree, that's how we feel.
Yeah.
And that's not even a prediction. That's just our confidence meter. How confident are we that these teams can make a run? And now, before we wrap up, we're going to go into our brackets. We've filled them out already, and we're gonna tell you what we think. We'll basically tell you who we think is going to take the city, regardless of whether they're in the Valley or not. And you can tell us what you think, right, wrong, indifferent. There's a couple intriguing matchups we've both kind of trying to will into existence. And we're just going to jump right into it. We'll start right away in open. Right on top, I've got San Pedro beating Eagle Rock, Franklin beating Garfield, Banning over Roosevelt, and Birmingham pulling the upset over Venice. And you look at it, and it's like, well, he took all the top seeds, and then he took the Valley team. In that sense, yeah, that's true. But I do think Banning is a better team than Roosevelt. The East Valley Classic was great. It opened our eyes to everything these teams can do, but I still don't think they get past. And same with Franklin and Garfield. I think Franklin is just that much better. So you go there, and then San Pedro's been destroying everybody this season. That's why they're the number 1 seed. So then I have San Pedro going over Franklin into the final. And if Birmingham gets past Venice, they're going to get past Banning. I do not believe that Banning or Roosevelt is on the same level as Venice. So Birmingham gets through Venice, they get through Banning, and that sets up a San Pedro Birmingham City final where Birmingham is looking to three-peat, but San Pedro will be your Open Division champion.
Yes. So in terms of my bracket, not much difference. I kind of went chalk as well, but that's because I do believe when you look at San Pedro, when you look at Garfield and Banning, I think those teams have been really strong and really consistent all year. So I went San Pedro and Garfield to meet in the semis. I have Banning going over Roosevelt just because I think Roosevelt might struggles offensively against top opponents. And yeah, it's not homerism. It's simply until someone beats Birmingham, I just don't. I don't. Their track record says don't bet against them. At least not early on. We're talking about a team last year that they didn't win a game in their non-league. They did really well in the West Valley, and then when they got into the Open Division playoffs, when those teams are supposed to be significantly tougher, they didn't allow a point to be scored until the third quarter of the championship game. So are they as good as that team was last year? No, they've taken a step back. That's why they're sitting as a 7 seed, but they weren't a top seed last year either. They still win. They still walked through everyone. So for me, this is the tricky matchup. Can they beat Venice? Venice has built a bully that is fully capable of winning this entire thing. But I think Birmingham has enough and can do enough to beat them. In the second round, I have Birmingham beating Banning. I have a rematch from last year's city championship against San Pedro, where they try to go for the three-peat. And I also think that San Pedro will get them. And I feel like San Pedro has to get them. I feel like this is the year that you get them before their young quarterback evolves into who he's going to be. And then everybody's going to have a problem on their hands when the young sophomore quarterback at Birmingham starts to reach his full potential. So if you're going to get him, you're going to get him now while he still might make a few mistakes. So I got San Pedro taking the Open.
And that slides us right in a D1. We got Granada Hills and Canoga Park, 1-16. I think this is gonna be a slugfest. In a phrase we used earlier, and I was determined to get this, on the record in a recording. It's gonna be big meaty men slapping meat.
Oh yeah.
Because you got two huge offensive lines that are going to be going at big defensive lines. And which team is going to win in the trenches is the team who's going to win the game. Ultimately, though, for me, Granada has more weapons. And that's going to be the difference. Because if it's not Dijon Stanley coming out of the Wildcat, hitting the edge and going, Darrell might come up the middle and break it for 80 yards. Or DJ might get the ball and find his way. So they've got that three-headed chimera. And that, I think, is going to be the difference there. Dorsey and Southgate. I've got Southgate going over. I think this is going to be a really close matchup. I don't really see too much separating these teams. And I'm going to give it to Southgate. And for me, it's because of what they did to Grant early in the season. And I think they've only gotten better since then. Cleveland and Lincoln. I do think Cleveland is itching to play somebody who's not in the West Valley League. after what happened to them this season. Corey Hall wants to just paste somebody, and he might take out his frustrations on Lincoln. And for that, I have Cleveland going over. Fairfax and El Camino. Fairfax is had a good year, decent enough, but I think again El Camino's set of weapons, the way they can deploy them, is probably going to be what takes them out of that first round and puts them in the quarterfinals with Cleveland. And going down, Palisades and Huntington Park, not too much to say. I think Palisades goes over. They are a very, very talented team that is looking to get back on track. And their season kind of started to falter after they lost to Cleveland earlier. So I do think they go over here. Gardena and Dimely, I did a little digging into this one, and I do think Gardena is better than that 11 seed they have. And Dimely might not be as strong as that 6 seed feed. So I've got Gardena going over. Westchester and Narbonne. Westchester's actually been decent this season. So I've got Westchester going. And then Carson hosting Hamilton in the bottom. That's a 2 seed. I think Carson goes over handily. I don't think there's much of a challenge there. So going to the quarterfinals, Gardena and Southgate, Granada and Southgate. I don't think Southgate can stop them. I don't. They're just going to ride that Chimera through the quarterfinals into the semis. No stopping. And then you get Cleveland and El Camino, a rematch from a couple weeks ago. Cleveland didn't have Corey Hall. Donovan Powell might have been dinged up because he didn't do anything much in the game. And El Camino kind of had their way with Cleveland. Even though I think Corey Hall plays a bit of a evening role because Corey is so damn dynamic, I think there's too many weapons for Corey Hall to stop. And so El Camino comes out on top. It'll be close, but I think El Camino's out on top. You're moving down, Palisades and Gardena. I think Palisades takes it clean, cut, and dry. Same when we go to Carson and Westchester. Carson's out, setting up a Palisades and Carson semis. And I'll start there. Palisades and Carson. I think the season Carson has had allows them, in my eyes, I don't think Palisades can stop them. They're probably better than what they showed against Cleveland, which is kind of one of our main barometers right now. So I do think Carson comes out on top. And then in the semis, we have a rematch from senior night, literally just wrapped up. Fast forward 3 weeks, and now they're facing each other again, Granada Hills and El Camino. This time, I believe, because El Camino was able to corral the Chimera somewhat, I believe if they're utilizing their offense differently, they win, because it changes the game plan. And it changes the way Granada Hills might have to approach. It puts more pressure on them, and we've talked about that being the key to defeating Granada. So I believe if El Camino gets their talent rolling and utilizing all 4 of their main weapons, they go over Granada. And that sets up a Carson and El Camino title. Unfortunately, I don't think El Camino can beat Carson. And that makes Carson our D1 city champion.
Yeah, this was an interesting bracket, especially the top half, because that's where all our Valley action really is. Granada Hills and Canoga Park. I think it's going to be a fun matchup. I think it's going to be a physical matchup. I think Granada Hills is going to get scared to death by this team coming in, because they'll be it'll be one of those games in which the Stanleys will break plays, and as soon as they think that they've broken the game open and and they're getting ready to pull away, I think Corey will come back with an 80-yard run of his own and keep Canoga in the ball game, and it's going to go down to the wire. But I just think that three-headed monster is just tough to stop. I think Canoga's going to show themselves well. I think they're going to prove that what they did in the regular season was no fluke at all. They are the real deal. I just think this is a tough spot to be in the first round, and someone's got to win and someone's got to lose. So I think Granada Hills will pull through it. Dorsey and Southgate, I'm just going to I felt like it was a coin flip between these two teams, but I think what we've seen from Dorsey defensively this year, I think will allow them to kind of squeeze past Southgate on the road. Cleveland, they're going to beat Lincoln. I think that what we saw from them this past week, I think Cleveland is starting to remember who they were the first part of the year. I think Elko's going to handle Fairfax. I don't think that's going to be much of an issue there. Palisades is on a mission. This is a team that had designs on being an open competitor when come playoff time. That at one point for the first month or so of the season, they were the number 2 ranked team in the entire city until they lost to Cleveland and the wheels fell off a little bit. I think they've got something to prove. I think they think that they shouldn't have been here. They should have been one of those teams sitting in the open, and they're going to take it out on their first couple of opponents. So I see Palisades beating Huntington Park. I see Gardenia alone, piggybacking off what you said. I believe the same thing. So I have Gardenia getting that upset. I got Westchester over Narbonne. I got Carson beating Hamilton. Quarterfinal matchups back to the top. Granada and Dorsey. I think Granada's going to take care of them. And, being at home, they'll take care of that. They'll take care of business there. Now, here's where we differ. I think in the rematch, with all things being considered, because Corey Hall didn't play the first time around, and now Cleveland having all hands on deck, I think that will be enough to help them squeeze past El Camino in a tight game. I think that game's going to be a lot tighter than the regular season affair was, but I do think Cleveland will pull through. The same thing. I think Pally's going to take care of Gardenia. They're still in they're in statement mode. I think Carson has been just a menace defensively all year. They'll take care of Westchester. And then our semifinal matchups, I think Granada, that's where the run will end for Cleveland. I think Granada will pull past them. I just think Granada's just got too much to deal with. And on the bottom end, I want to believe that Palisades would win, but I think that Carson is too physical. And if you can kind of contain that Palisades run game, you can beat them. And I think Carson is kind of equipped to do so. And that sets us up with a Granada Hills Carson championship. And I think this would be a really fun game. I think it'd be a tight game, but I think Dejon Stanley waltzes off to Utah with a Division I championship in his pocket. And I'm going to go Granada as the D1 champ.
We might have disagreed on our bracket, but I like that. I can't disagree with how good it would feel to send that kid off to Utah and be like, hey, you get to take a city championship with you and maybe go make some noise in state.
Yeah.
And so then that brings us into Division II, and like we said, this is kind of the Valley bracket. A lot of the teams are here from the Valley, and so kicking off, you've got Monroe and Taft. I do not see Monroe having issues here, and it's not a knock on Taft. It's just what Monroe does, especially what they've done this season. So Monroe advances. Kennedy's hosting Jefferson. As much as Kennedy's had a rough kind of end to their season, I see them handling Jefferson pretty easily. And then North Hollywood and Legacy. I think this is kind of where North Hollywood bounces back. They bounce back by running over Verdugo Hills. But this is where they come in and they say, no, we deserve this home field advantage. We're going to take this home field advantage and we're going to win. And then Grant and Marquez. I looked a little deep into this one, but at the end of the day, I really felt like Grant might be able to put it together just long enough to get past Marquez. Um, and then Panorama and Pauly, I I feel sorry for Aaron Somerville because this Panorama defense just swallows everyone up. Panorama advances. Silmar King Drew, this being King Drew's first actual season with a football program, they've done amazing things. I wanted to give it to them, but just something in me was like, I do think Silmar can put it together. They put a pasting on a team they were supposed to beat, and so maybe they go on the road and pull it out. And so I gave it to Silmar. And then down at the bottom, George Washington Prep and Santee. I got GWP going over. Not too big a deal there. Arleta and Bell, you just heard me apologize and give Arleta a very, very low confidence rating. Let me apologize again because I think Bell is going to take it. I don't think it's going to be as close as we would like it to be, even though their offense is starting to kind of put some things together. I think Bell goes over. Quarterfinals now just excites me for what we're going to display here. I've got Monroe and Kennedy, and I think this Monroe team is continuing to kind of put its stamp everywhere it goes. I think Monroe takes Kennedy and goes into the semis. North Hollywood Grant, this is a league rivalry rematch, and North Hollywood came out on top last time. I think this time they're the home team. They do it again. They did it on the road last time. I think they do it again at home. And it's another really close battle. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I think North Hollywood takes it by a score. And then we got another league rematch, Panorama Silmar. This time, again, Panorama's the home team. They were visiting during the regular season. This game was one score at the half, and then Panorama took it. I think we're going to see something similar. It'll be a really close game. Panorama takes it in the end. They're going on to the semis. And then George Washington Prep and Bell. I think Bell goes over and finds their way into the semis. Now, when I wrote this in the semis, I had to do a double take at what I had just done. Monroe and North Hollywood, the game that helped Monroe seal the East Valley League title. And now they're having a rematch in the semis to go into a D2 city title game. As much as I like the youth and exuberance and much as I like what Coach Fair has done in North Hollywood, I think this is Monroe again. I think if they go heads up again, Monroe takes it again. And they find themselves in that final. Panorama and Bell, I don't think Bell stops Panorama. I don't. And Monroe Panorama, I fully believe that this Panorama defense is going to put a blanket all over Williams, take away what Monroe wants to do, and they're going to deliver that division title that they missed out on by 1 point last season.
Okay, so this was an agonizing bracket because if you have listened or followed me this year, I have some pet teams that I've become a glorified cheerleader for because we want to boost all of our Valley teams. We do. But for me, there are things and in terms of like grit factor and just seeing how the camaraderie and these coaching staffs and seeing how and getting to see some of these teams and their inner workings and how they've gone about their business. You want everybody to win. If it was up to me, there'd be 20 city champions because I want them all to win. But that's not how it works. You get in the playoffs, you got to play who's in front of you, and you let the chips fall where they may. So for me in the first round, Monroe and Taft, I've had a soft spot for Taft this year because of everything they've gone through, having to play an entire road slate. But I think this is kind of where it ends for them, because I just think Monroe is they're built for the long haul. Kennedy it has a kind of a tough one in the first round with Jefferson coming in, but I think they'll take care of business at home. North Hollywood's going to take care of Legacy. I think North Hollywood is one of those teams. If and truly they felt like that matchup against Monroe for the East Valley title didn't go the way they wanted, and it wasn't necessarily because of how they felt that they played, but this is their opportunity to kind of right all of those things that they may have perceived as not going the way they would have wanted them to. And it sets up well for them. I think they're going to take care of Legacy and move on to the quarters. I'm right there with you. I think Grant could have been seated a little bit higher in the D2, but they were Jekyll and Hyde, so that's sort of where they fell. I don't know if I believe Marquez is as good as a 4 in D2, and I think that when the chips are on the table, when you're grasping at straws between teams, I'm going to go with the team that I think puts the best player on the field, and I think that Kazrick Anderson is the best player on the field between these two teams. I think that he's going to help carry them to the quarterfinals and pull the upset. Yeah, Aaron Somerville and that Poly team, great season. I like what that staff's doing there. I like the way they're building it, but they kind of set them up for the buzzsaw. And there's I don't know how competitive they can be in that sort of scenario with a team like Panorama. Maybe they'll hear our words and get pissed and they may try to prove us wrong, but I think Panorama's going to take care of them. Same thing. I want to believe in Silmar, but I think their youth and inexperience shows up at times when it's at inopportune times for them. So I'm going to go King Drew, a kind of a landmark win for them. In your first year as a football program, you win a playoff game. That says a lot for what they're building there. I got George Washington over Santee, and again, where our brackets clash. I hear you. I completely understand. We've talked all year about their offensive issues. We've talked about where the inconsistency has been. There's just something about this team and something about how I saw them kind of figure some things out down the stretch. What's the old adage? Because obviously our leader's a 15 seed here in D2. They're going to be on the road. Any game they play, if they win, they're on the road. And what's the old adage? Defense travels. So if they can just beat teams up enough and play one-score games, I will put my money on our leader figuring out how to beat you in a low-scoring one-score game. Monroe is the number 1 seed in this bracket. The only loss they had this year is to the 15 seed, our leader, who held Monroe to 3 points and bludgeoned them to death in a 13-3 win. That is the formula our leader is going to try to follow to try to steal a Division II championship. They are just going to try to beat you to death, and they might be able to do it against Bell. So I'm going to give them the upset over Bell. The game I agonize the most is this game at the top of the bracket in the quarterfinals between Monroe and Kennedy. These are two teams I have an affinity for. These are two coaches I have an affinity for. I've gotten to know a lot of the kids on either side in this program, and I know how hard both of these teams play. That's why, for me, this is a crapshoot of a game as there is in this tournament for me. And I legitimately think that the winner of this game is going to be the team who has the ball last. I think it's going to be one of those kind of games. I think it's going to be tight the entire way. I think they're going to go back and forth. And I think money on the table, I would love to see Monroe go through here. I think Kennedy will eat past them. I could see this game being 22-20. I could see a 24-21 game here where Kennedy maybe hits a field goal late. I just think that they'll just do just enough to pull the upset on the number 1 seed. NoHo and Grant, like I said, I think NoHo is kind of ticked off how things ended the season. I think they thought they had the East Valley one, and it didn't go their way. I think they're out for blood. I also think don't sleep on the idea that Monroe might also get caught sleeping in that Kennedy matchup, because you might be looking past Kennedy because you're looking at a potential rematch in the semis against NoHo, because that's what NoHo's going to want, and NoHo is going to get there to the semifinals. I got Panorama taking care of King Drew, and I got Arleta pulling the upset over GWP. Why not? Because if they can beat Bell, why couldn't they beat the 7 seed or the 10 seed, whoever's lined up in that quarterfinal? In the semifinals with Kennedy and North Hollywood, I just think North Hollywood's a year away. I like Jalen Burt, Ronnie Gibson. I like what they're doing there. But I think chips to push to the middle of the table, I think they would have a big issue with Kennedy's up-tempo style. I think Kennedy would do enough to stymie that run game and make them play Kennedy's style of game, and I think Kennedy would get him. I think the run for our leader would end in the semis when they ran in the Panorama, because if you think you can just bully, this will be where you can't bully the bully, and Panorama will take care of business there. And then that would lead up to a rematch of the game that I just was at in person on Friday night in Kennedy and Panorama. I would be inclined to believe that Kennedy would take the rematch, but I just think this might be Panorama's year. And I would give Panorama the edge over Kennedy in the championship. So Kennedy Panorama is my championship in D2, and Panorama's going to walk away with their first city championship.
Ooh, boy. Well, at least we agree on Panorama taking the D2 title.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. And that puts us right into D3. And this one, oh boy. Boy, oh boy. As soon as I saw Chester in there, I was like, okay, this looks a lot like last year's D3. But the difference is I don't see a Panorama type team that will push and keep, that was a 1-point game, Taft and Panorama. I honestly don't see one that can do that to Chatsworth. So Chatsworth, Diego Rivera, Chatsworth's going to run over him. Ramo's going to do what Ramo does. And I mean, even if they're inconsistent with line play, I just think there's too much Ramo to stop. So they're on Maywood and Fremont. Maywood is going to advance. And that's a tight one. Wilson, San Fernando. Took me a second, but the more and more I looked at it, the less impressed I was with Wilson. And I think if San Fernando can just stick to what has worked, San Fernando will go over. Jordan and Maya Angelou Community Charter, Jordan going over. Manual Arts and Locke, I've got Manual Arts going over. Chavez and Bernstein, I did go a little bit of back and forth on this, but again, looking at who Bernstein played, yes, you can only play who's on your schedule, but it didn't really stand out to me as this is a team that's going to make a lot of noise. Where on the flip side, Chavez has been a headache for almost everybody they faced. You look at the league champs in Monroe, they almost beat them. They almost beat Grant. They pushed Arleta. They played a really tight game against Verdugo Hills. So for a team that you look at and you go, they don't look like they're doing too well. when their defense is humming and they're not letting you score, their offense will find a way to get a break. And if they can hold you to 2 scores or less, they've got a chance to winning. So I've got Chavez going over Bernstein, and then I've got the next one, Southeast and Verdugo. I have Verdugo Hills going over if they can put it all together, and I'm just going to stay hopeful that they can. Because as we said earlier, this coaching staff has really done an amazing job in rebuilding on the fly. And then at the bottom of the bracket, we have Los Angeles and Crenshaw. I think Crenshaw goes over. Haven't seen too much from LA, so I give it to Crenshaw. Back to the top, Chatsworth and Maywood. Chatsworth goes over, just like I said earlier. I think Ramo does enough. Get him over. San Fernando, Jordan. I have Jordan advancing. If not for the fact that San Fernando's defense can get caught sometimes, and that might exploit them against a Jordan team. And I got Manual Arts and Chavez. And again, I wasn't blown away by Manual Arts, and I think Chavez might do enough. Again, all this Chavez offense needs to do is provide 14 points. If the Chavez offense can provide 14 points and not give up any in terms of an interception return or fumble return, then this defense can handle it. And that takes us to the bottom of that part of the bracket where it's Verdugo Hills and Crenshaw. People might want to call me a homer on this one. But I look at it and I go, if Verdugo Hills gets past Southeast and they put it together enough to get past Southeast, which I think they will give Crenshaw a fight for their money, and I think they come out on top. So we get into our semis. We have Chatsworth and Jordan. I think Chatsworth goes right over Jordan. Nothing stopping them. Chavez, Verdugo, another rematch. And again, I don't think Chavez holds Verdugo under points here, just because Verdugo believes they have the Chavez defense figured out. They believe they had the Chavez defense figured out last season when they lost 8-7. So with that said, I think Verdugo takes it over Chavez. In the semis, we got Chatsworth, Verdugo in the final. Another rematch. Remo had 500 yards in the game. The first game they played, I don't think he gets 500 yards this time. But I still believe that Chatsworth takes it over Verdugo Hills.
Yeah, so this bracket, it was hard to not look at where Chatsworth was sitting and not think, okay, this could be a bit of a waltz for them. So the first round over Diego Rivera, Chatsworth, not much trouble there. I had Maywood pull a minor upset over Fremont. I had Wilson over San Fernando just because I just think that San Fernando's the inconsistency kind of kills them at times, and and I'm banking on that kind of rearing itself in this playoff matchup on the road. I've got Jordan pulling out the win over Maya Angelou. I got Manual Arts over Locke. Here's what I want to say about Chavez. I have a young son. My partner over here, he has young children. And the thing about Chavez is they are very youthful. And if you are someone like my partner and myself, or anyone within the sound of our voice, when you're dealing with young children or youth in general, it doesn't get tired. It doesn't stop. When you want to stop, it will still keep going. Kids don't get tired. They will keep coming and coming and coming and going. And when you watch Chavez, that is what you get. You think they're done. They're never done. You think you've got a 2-score lead and you're going to breeze. All of a sudden, when you get in the fourth quarter, the game's tied. You think you're at a position to put them away. You've got the ball. Here comes three guys gang tackling. The third guy comes in, he pulls the ball out. Now they've got the ball again, and they're ready to, and they're coming right back at you. This is a team that I saw in crunch time when they were trailing in a game this year, never even attempt to throw the ball. The team knows they're running. They've got a 9-man box, and they still march the length of the field to tie a game. That is what you deal with when you play against Chavez. They are going to play tight games. This is a bracket where there is no offensive juggernaut here that's going to run you out of the building. They know that. They just know they got to play sound. And even with their guys being young, they have been through the ringer this season because a lot has been put on these youthful guys' shoulders. And it's time for and now this is all icing on the cake for them. So I think they're going to take care. They're going to pull the upset on Bernstein on the road. Verdugo Hills, I got them taking care of Southeast. I don't look at Southeast as a team that I think is a juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination. And Verdugo Hills still has plenty of talent left over from previous season where they played pretty well. So I think Verdugo's going to win there. I got Crenshaw handling Los Angeles. Chatsworth is going to take care of Maywood. I think Jordan pulls it out over Wilson, setting up a Chatsworth-Jordan semifinal. I think Chavez will beat Bernstein, and I think they'll handle Manual Arts as well, setting them up in the semifinals. I have Crenshaw over Verdugo Hills. I agonize a little bit over this one because I want to believe that Verdugo Hills can really make a run, but I just think that they've been consistently inconsistent this year, and I think it catches up to them here in the quarters. I have Chatsworth taking care of Jordan and waltzing into the championship. And I had this, and it pains me, but I think that this is where the run might end for Chavez. I just think their offensive limitations might catch up to them at some point in a tournament format. And I think it'll be close. It'll be tight. They'll be there in the end. They'll probably be at Crenshaw with the ball in their hands with a chance to steal the game at the end. But I think this might be where it ends. And then in the championship, I got Chatsworth versus Crenshaw. And this is where Chatsworth propensity to kind of make mistakes might catch up to them. I think that they are better than Crenshaw, but I don't trust them to not make mistakes when the money's on the line. And I think Crenshaw is going to pull the upset in the championship and take the D3 championship.
And there you have it. We've broken the brackets down. We agree on a little bit. We disagree on a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we do agree on is these Valley teams are going to make some noise, and they deserve as big a spotlight as we can put on.
It's going to be a fun ride. I think congratulations to all of our teams that got into the tournament in the city section. I think it says something about the quality of our football that will from our 3 leagues based in the Valley. I think it says something about the quality of our league that 18 of the 20 teams that are based here in the Valley all got in. And you can make an argument that Van Nuys could have been the 19th team that got in over a couple of teams who actually got in. So good job to all the coaches and staff for getting these teams into this position, and good luck to you all, and hopefully you all make a lot of noise.
Good luck, and we'll be seeing you. We'll be watching, and have fun.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys later.
Peace.